The sport of powerlifting has leveled up dramatically within the last year. We're seeing records that we never thought would fall being taken by sometimes even juniors, like the Will Ball example recently. So you got me thinking, out of the records that stand today, which one of them will remain unbroken for the longest period of time across the men and the women's side? So the criteria I'm looking at here is I'm taking official IPF world records, so international world records, looking at totals and individual lift world records, so squat, bench, and deadlift. I'm not looking at any single lift only, so no bench only or deadlift only, just full meet results. And unbreakable by anyone else. This is what I mean when I say the most unbreakable records. For example, take Amanda Lawrence's squat, right? It wouldn't surprise me at all if Amanda Lawrence manages to break her own squat world record. However, I don't think any other 84 kilo woman on the planet is anywhere near Amanda Lawrence's squat. Therefore, that's going to be pretty high up on this list. I'm also going to be showing you who is closest to each one of these records, so you can see how far away they are and how unbreakable it really does look. Okay, so starting off with number 15, Anthony McNaughton, 105 kilo, total world record of 975.5 on his way to winning worlds this year. He did do a couple kilos more than this domestically at PNS with 979, but regardless, this stands as the world record right now. And this is quite a ways in front of anyone else. He added 35 kilos to the world record with that performance. And people are thinking he's good for 1,000 kilos at Sheffield, and I'm inclined to agree with them. As far as how far ahead he is of anyone else, Ashton Ruska has the second highest 105 total with 960.5. He did also total 968, slightly over 105 when he was lifting the USAPL's 110 weight class. Keenan Lee hit 958.5, and Anatoly Novosmeny is 940.5, who that was a world record going in that Anthony McNaughton beat by a full 35 kilos. So those are the closest contenders, and honestly, Anthony McNaughton has quite the spread on all of them, and his 975.5 was arguably easier than Ashton's, Keenan's, and Anatoly's respective totals that you see there. So, like I said, I think Anthony is good to push that all the way up to 1,000, and I don't see anyone else coming close to that anytime soon. Number 14, Agatha Shitko's 84 kilo bench press of 156 kilos. Now, you knew Agatha Shitko's bench was going to make an appearance on this list. The question was which weight class and where. I went with her 84 kilo record of 156, even though, she has the world record in the 69s and 76s, and her 69 world record is actually higher than this with 158. But I do think that her 84 kilo bench, she's further ahead of her competitors than the other two weight classes. So if you look, 147.5 is the most any other 84 kilo woman has ever done in a full meet, and that was Lyudmila Prochenko, who's no longer an active powerlifter. So right now you have Michelle Robbins, 142.5, and Olivia St. Hilaire, 141.5 as the closest competitors to this, which is quite a ways off. Now, in terms of the 69 kilo weight class, Carola Gara is, around 150, so not too far away from Agatha. And in the 76s, Laura Matalin of France is also around 150, so not too far away from Agatha's world record there. However, in the 84s, no one is anywhere near Agatha. And I think Agatha is more likely to spend at least the next couple years in her career in the 84s to try and catch and beat Amanda Lawrence. So I think it's more likely that she ups this world record herself, making it even harder for anyone else to break. And speaking of Agatha, we have her deadlift as well. This time in the 69 kilo class, 260 kilos. She did this at Sheffield this year. And Agatha is ridiculous that she has a bench and a deadlift on this list. But as she said, she kind of sort of turned into a deadlift specialist a year or so ago, despite always being a bench press specialist. But 260 is 12.5 more than anyone had ever done. Chandler Babb at Worlds, it was actually after Sheffield, hit 247.5. Then you had Leah Bavois, former world record holder there, and legend 237.5, and Janae Kovac 235 on her way to winning Junior Worlds this year in the 69s. So it doesn't seem like that's super far away, but I think Agatha's 260, she had more in there. And Chandler Babb's 247.5 was a grind, plus she's been around for a while, so I don't know how much more she's going to add to that. Leah Bavois as well has, you know, I'm sure she can still improve, but to add another 20 plus kilos already to what has always been one of her biggest weapons in her deadlift, I'm not sure. And Janae Kovacs is a junior, still getting stronger, but that's quite a big spread to try and make up still. So I actually think Agatha's deadlift is more likely to remain standing longer than her bench press world records, which honestly I could have taken any one of her 3 weight class world records in bench, but I ended up picking her 84 one. But there you go. Spoiler alert, this won't be Agatha's last appearance on this list. Number 12, Tiffany Chapone's 47 kilo squat world record of 165.5 kilos. This was done at Worlds in 2024, I believe. 165.5. The most ever done by another 47 is Wei-Ling Chen, who did 152.5, who is no longer an active lifter. Of active lifters today, you have Jessica Espinal, who briefly held the total world record in the class with 150, and Heather Connor, who beat Tiff this year at Worlds with 147.5. So that's quite a big spread, especially in a class like the 47s. You're not going to see a lot of people adding 15 plus kilos to their top end lifts in that weight class, given that, you know, percentage wise, that's quite a huge jump to make. Plus, Tiff's squat has also been getting stronger. I believe in training, she recently hit in excess of 170. So I think that world record is in danger, but only by Tiff herself and by no one else for probably a long time. And also Ines Herbout, 147.5. So she hit that at Junior Worlds this year. So there's another one. Probably one of the biggest contenders, to be honest, given that she's still a junior and has, you know, a lot of years to pack on those kilos. But I do think Tiff has a pretty huge spread still. Number 11, Farhana Farid's 52 kilo deadlift world record. This was done at World Games this year, 217 kilos. And as you can see there, as easy as you like, she has a lot more kilos in the tank. Evie Corrigan previously held a world record with 208.5 at Sheffield 2024, I believe that was. However, Evie is, since then, she hasn't been able to beat that number. She's been around 205, 207.5 in the couple of meets she's done since then. And I think she's mentioned that she's kind of ready to go back up to the 57 kilo weight class now after spending these few years in the 52s. Now that Megan Lee Smith caught her and beat her at World Games head to head, she feels like she's stagnant and she's going back up to the 57s, which only means that Farhana is going to have even less contention for that deadlift world record. Noemi Alabert also hit 200 kilos, although that was a few years ago. And since then, she's been around the 190, 195s. So yeah, quite a big spread Farhana has. Plus, not to mention that 217 was super easy. So I can almost guarantee the next time she competes, she's going to go for that chip once again and probably keep adding to it. All right, on to the top 10. Another deadlift, and this time it is Sanchez Dillon, the 105 kilo deadlift world record holder. 400 kilos is the world record that he hit. That was at last year's Worlds. He's attempted to pull over 900 pounds several times since then. He came very close at a British Nationals meet, which I think he should have got, but he got red lighted for soft knees or soft lockout potentially. And he also went for it at Worlds this year, but couldn't quite lock it out. Krzysztof Rzybicki also deadlifted 400 kilos. The greatest deadlifter in IPF history, Krzysztof Rzybicki is. World records in the 93s and the 105s, and his 400 kilos that he hit all the way back in 2017 as a 105 is still equal to the biggest ever done, and that's of course by Sanchez Dillon. Now granted, Krzysztof's 400 wasn't in an international meet, it was in a local Polish meet. I think 390 was the most he hit, or 391 internationally, which Sanchez Dillon broke before his 400. But obviously, Krzysztof Rzybicki is a long turn to the dark side and is not going to be competing in the IPF anytime soon. In terms of active lifters, Joshua Hall, we have a few Americans here who are actually kind of close. Joshua Hall, 383.5, who's transitioning from the USAPL and competing, I believe, at SBD Austin, which is going to be awesome to see him coming across to Powerlifting America. Ashton Ruska hit 383. Now, this was back in 2020, so it's been a few years, and Ashton has not been able to beat this in the 5 years since. He's still good for, 370s, 380, but 383 is his best ever lifetime deadlift. I don't think he's going to threaten anywhere near 400 though. based on his trajectory over the last few years. And Jalen Falk, another former USAPL lifter who is now in Powerlifting America as of recently, 382.5. So he's also right in contention. So you have those three Americans all clustered together. But Sanchez Dillon, as I mentioned, he has come very close before to 900 pounds. And he's not just going to extend his world record, he's going for the heaviest deadlift in IPF history, currently held by Timur Semkaradze with 411 kilos. And I think he's good to get it. So yeah, there's a pretty big spread, given that Sanchez Dillon, I think, is going to add more kilos onto that very, very soon. There are other big lifters as well from outside America in this weight class too. You have Emil Norling, who's done 380, Regan Stagakis, who's 370s to 380, Coco Clermont, who's around that same range, Keenan Lee as well is another one. So you have quite a few who are sort of in that 370s, 380 sort of mark, but it's still a pretty big jump to get from that to the magical 400 and beyond, as Sanchez Dillon is going for. Number 9, Sunita Mulu's 84 plus kilo squat world record, 701 pounds, 318 kilos that she did at Euros this year. Super smooth, and since then she has attempted over this a couple times at Worlds and at World Games. At World Games she took 325.5, and in my opinion she should have got it. She did briefly get it, but it got overruled for presumably depth, although it looked pretty good to me. So Sunita is definitely good for well into the 320s. And her closest competitor is, of course, her long-term rival, Brittany Schlatter. The head-to-head between these two and the back and forth has been amazing to watch in the last couple of years, and it continues to this very day, and for the next few years, hopefully will also continue. But Brittany Schlatter's 295 is the second biggest squat, and that is over 20 kilos behind Sunita, not to mention Sunita has more in the tank than that. Marilyn Etalay hit 291 at a New Zealand meet, so she's also a huge squatter. And Bessie O'Brien, 290 kilos off Nauru at World Games. And she also attempted over 300. And again, she stood up with it, but it got overruled or red lighted for what would have been a very borderline call once again. So probably the only reason why Sunita's not higher on this list is because Bessie O'Brien is still super young. I think she's, what is she now, 20, something like that, years old. So very much still a junior for a couple years more. And she already pretty much squatted over 300, just barely missed it on a technicality. So she's closing that gap between her and Sunita. And even though Sunita's good for well into the 320s, potentially even more than that, Bessie could catch her in the next few years, although I don't think that'll happen for a while yet. And number 8, Heather Connor, 47 kilo deadlift queen, 212.5. Of course, we all remember this. One of the craziest, most dramatic deadlifts we've ever seen in the IPF. To beat Tiff for the world title this year. 212.5 as a 47 is nuts. How nuts, you ask? Well, the second biggest ever is Aurelie Nguyen of Canada with 188 kilos. And behind that, you have Jessica Espinal, who has a huge deadlift herself of 186. But again, percentage-wise, there's a pretty huge gap between that and Heather Connor, who is not only well into the 200s, but she's above 210 now. And granted that 212.5 was very much a limit lift, and half a kilo more probably would not have gone that day. But still, no one else is that close to 200, and Heather Connor is way beyond 200. Yeah, Heather Connor is going to hold this record for a long time, I think. Number 7, Russell or his 83 kilo squat. 338 is a squat that Russ hit at Sheffield this year. It looked pretty damn comfortable too, which was nuts. And now, of course, Russ also now holds the 93 kilo squat world record that he did at IPFs, which I think is in contention more so because you have Gavin Aiden, who is, going to be pushing to reclaim that squat world record. But in terms of the 83 world record, I think Russ's 83 squat record is safe for a while to come because the second biggest squat ever, Jamar Royster, 327.5. For a while there, he was Ross's main rival in the USAPL in the dark ages with the sport split. Yeah, that's right. I still trash USAPL, even though I've read all your comments supporting them. But yeah, Jamar Royster, 327.5. He's now a 93 lifter, and he's someone else who is gunning to take Ross's 93 squat world record, which I think he will do, assuming he makes an international meet. Jamar has squatted something ridiculous, like over 370 kilos as a 93 in the gym. So we just need to see him take an international platform so he can finally take that squat world record that should be his, because he is the strongest 93 squatter in the world. There is no ifs or buts about it. But yeah, he's not an 83 anymore. In terms of current 83s, you have Ange Fortino, who squatted 320 at a meet he did recently, and Taylor Atwood, of course, hit 700 pounds at PNATs, and Durans also hit 700 pounds at World Games. But again, that is still over 20 kilos below what Russ hit, and despite Taylor and Durans they're both veterans of the sport, but they've both made huge strides lately. Taylor due to moving up, and Durans just due to, I don't know what, but he's somehow been getting that much stronger, despite being in the game for quite a while in the same weight class. But yeah, they've got a ways to go. Ange Fortino's 320 is probably the closest, but again, I think Russ can sleep well at night knowing his 83 squat is not going to get broken anytime soon. Number 6, Sergey Fedosienko's 59 kilo bench press world record, 171 kilos. This was done all the way back in 2016. 9 years later, it is still the record, and there is still no one anywhere near it. Michael Booker hit 170. That's the closest anyone has come, although that was done back in like the early 2000s, and he, was never in the IPF, and he's not an active lifter right now. In terms of active 59 lifters, you have Kyosuke Yoshioka, who hit 149. Waska Carpio, who hit 148 kilos and has done around that mark, or 147.5 in his last few meets as 59. And then Ivan Campagno Diaz with 147.5 on his way to winning Worlds this year. Now, the reason why I didn't put this higher on the list, even though it very well could have been, is because Waska Carpio is competing at Advanced Houston coming up soon, and he has been hitting some ridiculous bench presses in training. Now, I don't know if he's moving up to the 66s or not. I haven't seen any announcement from him that he is, but I'm talking like he's benched over 171 in training, like 172.5, 175 I've seen him do. Of course, I assume he's going to cut regardless of what weight class he ends up in, 59 or 66. But if he does somehow go to 59s and keep that strength, I mean, he could be challenging for his world record, which is crazy because the most he's ever done is 148. So the fact he's added so much in training to his bench press is insane. And that is why this isn't high on the list. But I mean, number 6 is still pretty high. I don't think Waska's going to break the world record, but you never know. Number 5, the big man, Jesus Olivares, his 120 plus kilogram total, 1152.5. Of course, he did this at the inaugural Sheffield, one of the most impressive powerlifting performances of all time, and it will remain so probably forever. Over 1,000 pound squat, 600 pound bench, 900 pound deadlift, about as perfect a performance as you can get, 9 for 9. He still hasn't been able to hit these heights since, at the couple of Worlds and Sheffields he's done since this, but his train now has been looking good, and I can't wait to see what he does at SBD Austin. And again, there is no one remotely close to this in the IPF, and this could have been a lot higher on this list. However, there is one man who could be somewhat close. Not necessarily Ray Williams, though. Ray Williams has the second biggest total, 1112.5. Now, he is still lifting actively, and he did have a pretty solid performance at PNATs this year, totaling in the mid-thousands. Unfortunately, he popped for some stupid band stimulant, so we're not going to see him at PNATs next year, nor any internationals soon. Even if we did, though, I doubt he could break Jesus' record. Devontae Lewis, though, this is the reason why this is only number 5 on the list and not higher, is because Devontae Lewis is a legit threat. He totaled 1108, and granted this was on a deadlift bar, and that was kind of dodgy, but he still squatted 1,000 pounds. He still benched 288 or something ridiculous. So his subtotal is absolutely monstrous. And if he can clean up that deadlift, I know he's training on a power bar now. I hope he's going to Powerlifting America and not wasting his time with USAPL, so we can see him try and chase for the IPF spot and go head to head with Jesus, because that would be crazy. But yeah, this is also the reason why I didn't put Jesus' squat world record on this list, because I do think Devontae is definitely a big threat for that if he can get onto an international team somewhere. Same with Ray, if he can get back onto an international team at NAPFs or something, I think he's good to take Jesus' squat world record back. And going back to Fedosienko, the reason why I didn't have Fedosienko's total world record on here is because I think that is under fire by a few lifters now, including Ivan Campagna-Diaz, including Waska if he stays at 59, and Wahyu Surya as well. Not to mention Kasim Sen if he can bring it together as a 59. So yeah, that's why Fedor's total wasn't on here, and Jesus's individual lifts weren't either. Number 4, Eddie Berglund's 66 kilo bench press world record. Now, somewhat controversial because, as you can see, this was done before the elbow depth rule came into place, and the elbow depth rule did in fact hurt Eddie Berglund's bench, because after this was done in 2018 Euros. He held the 74 kilo bench world record, which was actually lower than this with the elbow depth rule. So higher weight class, lower world record obviously made a huge difference. But yeah, no one is close. Elbow depth or not elbow depth, you can't help but respect the crazy amount of weight. Like, for a 66 to bench 213.5 is ridiculous. The closest anyone has come to that is Shell, who did 195 at Sheffield, and Jonathan Garcia, who did 185.5 at PNAT for the American record. Right now, Shell is not a 66 lifter anymore. He said he's done with that weight class forever. Even if he was still almost 20 kilos off of that world record. Jonathan Garcia, 185.5, has the biggest bench out of any active 66 right now, but he's still almost 30 kilos off that world record. So no one is threatening this anytime soon. And yeah, honestly, this couldn't even be higher on the list because no one's coming close. I mean, Panna and Kyoto had big benches around the 180 mark, but they're both moving up to 74. And even if they weren't, I don't think any one of them is benching in the 200s either. So yeah, Eddie Berglund's bench is going to stand for a while yet. Number 3 is Amanda Lawrence's squat that I mentioned. In the 84 kilo class, 249.5 is the biggest squat that she has hit. On the international stage, I believe she's done more than this at other meets in the 250s, but internationally 249.5 is the world record. The closest anyone has come, Daniela Mello, in that legendary 2019 Worlds head-to-head battle with Amanda, hit 230 kilos. She is now in the 69 kilo class, so she's not going to be upping that anytime soon. Carlina Tongatea actually is the closest out of any active lifter. She did a meet back in 2023 as a light 84, hitting 227. Of course, she's a 76 lifter with a world record squat of, I think, 231, which in itself also made this list. But you do have a few lifters like Cranen's, in the 220s, could be getting close. But yeah, Carlina's squat almost made this list as well, her 76 squat world record. Layla Taylor is another American 84 lifter who also squatted 500 pounds. But again, that's just still a pretty huge gap. And even then, I think Amanda Lawrence can absolutely add more to her squat world record. I think she can hit in the 250s. She has done so before. And I think the fact that Agatha is coming up to push her, she's going to need as many kilos as she can between her squat and Agatha's squat, because Agatha's out benching her, and she could well out deadlift her too, right? Because their deadlifts are getting really, really close. So Amanda's going to need that squat to show up. It's her biggest weapon, and I think she's going to extend it even more. And like I said in the intro, there is not an 84 kilo woman on the planet anywhere near Amanda's level when it comes to squatting. So I anticipate she's going to hold that record for a very long time. Number 2 is Shell Backlund's 66 kilo total, 770 on his way to winning Sheffield this year. He did what he said he was going to do, and that was absolutely murder the 66 kilo world record. He talked his trash, and then he walked the walk. 770, 725 was the world record coming into this, and pretty much a total anywhere in the 700s made you one of the best 66 lifters in the world. Shell is now way beyond that. He's past the mid 7s. He's in the high 7s, and yeah, absolutely crazy performance. Like I mentioned earlier, he did say he was done with this weight class, so we're not going to see him in the 66 again, which I think is a shame, because I do think if he had a perfect day, he could have hit 800 kilos. But I understand that it takes a lot out of him to try and cut down when he's, walked around a lot heavier than that before. He even spent a good amount of his years as an 83 in his career. So he's back up as a 74 now. I'm keen to see what he can do there. But yes, his 66 record, he very much left the mark on that weight class. Like I said, Kyoto Ishiyama's 725, which he hit at the end of 2024, pretty close before Sheffield at the Asian Championships that year. That's the second biggest 66 total. Like I said, Kyoto is now moving up to the 74s after his World Games performance being his last as a 66. Then you have Avery Jackson, who hit 720 at PNATs this year. Also finished silver at Worlds with 700. And then Joe Jordan, 720 at World Games on his way to winning. Probably the biggest threat, I would say, given that Kyoto's no longer there, Pana's no longer there, and Joe Jordan 720 looked pretty comfortable, and he narrowly missed a third deadlift, which would have given him, I believe, in the 730s. And then Jonathan Garcia, who's always a threat, 718 at PNATs, only 2 kilos behind Avery in what was a stunning upset there. But yeah, so there are a few lifters now who are sort of getting into that range, right? Joe Jordan, we saw him do 720 internationally, which sort of puts him above Avery and Jonathan's performance there, since they were done domestically at American Nationals. And then, like I mentioned, Pana and Kyoto are now 74s. And yeah, there are some other 66s who are in the high 6s, low 7s. Austin Nikolai is sort of in the low 7s as well. Very promising junior lifter. But man, that's a 50 kilo spread. And I mean, even Joe Jordan, if he continues on this trajectory, I can see him maybe 730s, maybe 740s, trying to push towards 750. But even that would be huge. And 770, I think, is just a long, long way off. So yeah, as crazy as Eddie Berglund's bench press world record seemed, I actually think Shell's total world record in the class will stand for a longer time than that. And number one, you probably knew what this was going to be. Agatha Shitko's third entry onto this list. We had her bench, we had her deadlift. Her 69 kilo total, though, I think is going to be the one to stand the longest. If I had to put money on one current world record that is going to be the last one to fall, it would have to be this one. 628 kilos as a 69. This was on her way to winning Sheffield this year, after she won Sheffield the previous year with 600, which was already insane. This was 28 kilos above that. And unless she goes back down to the 69s to try and extend this world record, because I believe she's moving back up to the 76s towards the 84s to face off against Amanda. I actually don't know, because I don't even know if she's unbanned yet. Hopefully that ban is removed, because we all want to see Agatha compete. But yeah, unless she goes back down, no one is threatening this. The second biggest total ever is Carola Gara with 588.5. She actually did that at Worlds this year, on her way to finishing second behind Agatha, who weighed in super light, barely over the 63 kilo weight class, barely making the minimum weight, and still comfortably beat Carola Gara, who had put up the second biggest total ever in the weight class with 588.5. And then Leah Bavois hit 585 at 2024's Sheffield, also losing to Agatha. So pretty crazy that the second and third biggest performances in the weight class were still defeats done head-to-head against Agatha. That's what makes her, partially what makes her so great. But yeah, I mean, if it weren't for Agatha, those performances by Carola and Leah would be up there with pound for pound the best ever. But the fact that Agatha is just that good, that she's 40 kilos ahead of even some of the other biggest pound for pound performances in the sport, is genuinely mind-blowing. And like I said before, I don't think anyone is coming anywhere near that world record anytime soon. So there you have it. Those are my top 15 most unbreakable world records in the IPF right now across the men and the women. Let me know what you think, if I missed any, or if you agree or disagree with my picks.